Howdy! This short video is going to walk you through some new Texas cybersecurity laws. I've pulled up the website from a law firm, Greenberg Targ, because it's much easier to read than the sites by the state. So let's see what's coming new. This was just passed and gone into effect last September 1st, 2017. And whether or not we are citizens of Texas, we are studying at Texas A&M University, and we are residents of Texas. So let's see what they're doing. Representative Giovanni Capriglione, and I hope I pronounced that correctly, had two bills that he introduced and were passed. The first is the Texas Cybersecurity Act. Now, don't worry about the sunset review process. All state agencies in Texas are subject to the sunset review. That's not what's important. What's important is expanding the role of the Department of Information Resources at the state. Let's look at what this law does. It's going to enter into agreement, such as the National Cybersecurity Preparedness Consortium, to support implementation efforts. This is trying to bring consistency through all the states in the United States. This second sentence here is extremely important. The agency is also required to establish an Information Sharing and Analysis Center, an ISAC. That's to provide a forum for agencies to share information regarding cybersecurity threats, best practices, and remediation strategies. We will see the concept of the ISAC also used in industry. Now, look what else they're doing. They're going to provide mandatory guidelines to state agency on continuing education requirements for cybersecurity training for all state information resource employees, and establish requirements for a biennial, every 2 years, information security assessment report that now all state agencies must conduct. This sounds quite a bit like the standard risk assessments that the federal government requires. How will this change? Well, state agencies are now required to identify information security issues and develop a plan to prioritize remediation and mitigation. They're required to conduct an information security assessment on the agency's network systems, data storage, data security, information resources. You can read this at least every 2 years and to report the results. And every 2 years, there must be a data security plan to conduct vulnerability and penetration tests. Now, if you're in risk assessment or you're in law and policy, that doesn't matter because this has both concepts. The security plan is going to look at the risk associated and make sure that it's going to look at the vulnerabilities and mitigate any risk of penetrating the state's website or that contains personally identifiable or confidential information. Check out this next paragraph. Institutions of higher education, that is, colleges, must adopt and implement a policy for websites or mobile operations operated by the institution to ensure the privacy of individuals and the confidentiality of information processed is reserved. This is an interesting aspect as well. Texas has something called the Open Meetings Act. Any time an agency conducts business and notes or minutes are kept, they are subject to public scrutiny. However, this is similar to our Freedom of Information Act in the federal level. But this gives the agencies the freedom it needs to properly deliberate these sensitive matters and not have them subject to the Open Meetings Act. Another aspect of this law is regarding data breaches. It expands the categories of information that, if compromised, triggers an agency's duty to notify. So it adds additional requirements that state agencies must now report a data breach or suspected data breach to the DIR. And lastly, it's going to conduct a study regarding cyber attacks on election infrastructure. This study must include an investigation of vulnerabilities in the infrastructure itself, information on attempted cyber attacks, voting machines or registered voting list, and recommendations for protecting these. And there's going to be a public summary of this report as well as a confidential report for elected officials that will be exempt from the Texas Public Information Act. This is quite a step forward for the state of Texas. This is a major bill. So let's go back and look at that. It was House Bill 8, but it was called the Texas Cybersecurity Act. Let's look at the next bill, which I think I just passed up.